Validation. Okay, so the validation means that we have to ensure that the data passed from the client, they are following the business rules, or they are following a particular patterns or format that our system can accept it. Okay, just for example, like the IDs, we need an integer. So if the user give a ID as a string, then our system should reject it, right? Instead of just pass this string to the database. So for instance, like if we had get and we have a slash ingredient slash one. Okay, so then this is a valid input, okay, which is the user input, one. Okay, from the client side we give one. But if I give ABC, okay, so then what's gonna happen is the ABC is not an integer, so then Spring will by default will reject this kind of like a type mismatch. Okay, so it will return us a 400 bad request. And also in the console, we should see, okay, so there is some errors. Okay, so like failed to convert value from type this to this. Okay, so then this is the exception. Okay, it's called a method argument type mismatch exception. So that's the easy one to handle. But what if we have some more like complicated exceptions? Like for example, we want to create an ingredient, okay, and the name should be following a pattern. Like they should be all like longer than, let's say, 3 characters. Right? You cannot just put AB or just one single character, right? So we have a length. So in that case, how we can do the validation? First of all, we can do it in here, right? In the controller, we can just reject this kind of request. Let's see if request dot get name, okay, dot length less than 3, for instance. Okay, then we can just gonna throw some exception like method argument illegal exception. Okay, or let's, for example, here we just simply use a new runtime exception. Okay, so for this one, and argument, let's see, the name is too short. Okay, so this kind of exception, and then we restart it. Then we go to our postman. Okay, and we want to create a new ingredient. Let's see, we just put A, okay, there, and then send. Okay, so the error is here is an internal server error. That's the default Spring Boot error, but in the backend we have this name is too short. Okay, we can customize this. We can just handle it using an exception handler, just to simply put a runtime exception here and then customize this to runtime exception. Okay, and here we can just put a runtime exception here and then create a message. This message could be e.get message. Okay, and the status code is this could be 400, for example, and then cause, okay, is just the input invalid. Okay, invalid, oops, invalid the input. Okay, and then the status code is bad request. Bad request. Okay, and adding a new exception handler to handle runtime exception. Then same request send. Okay, now we get a 400 bad request. Okay, name is too short, 400 invalid input. Okay, and then there is no error in the log. Okay, so this is one way that we can use manual check, right, to check our exception. But let's see here if we have to update the ingredient. Okay, this has the same idea, right? So when you update the ingredient, the updated ingredient cannot be too short. So we have to copy, paste here. Okay, you can see it's a duplicate, right? We cannot reuse the same logic, but we can reuse the same exception handler because this is provided by Spring. This is we manually do this validation. If the validation is just unique for one particular API, we can do this easily, okay, no problem. But if we have multiple ones, multiple places, okay, so then in this case we can ideally think of like AOP, right? So AOP is doing this like validation through different method. So Spring also provides us a validation. Okay, so we can have a validated annotation, put it above in front of a method. So sorry, not a method, sorry, in front of a method parameter, so that it can use internally. It can use a Bing validation framework. Okay, so we can go to the POM XML. Sorry, not POM XML, the external libraries, and we will see the Bing validation. Where is it? Okay, so Spring Bing validation. Oh, so sorry, I forgot to import the dependency. Okay, so for this one here, we need a starter. Okay, let's just add a dependency. Okay, so the dependency should be validation. Let's just see if it can. No. Okay. Spring Boot starter validation. Okay, where is it? Here. Okay, so we have to add this one, and then refresh. Okay, so then it will download a Bing validation framework. Let's see, where is it? Here. Okay, so then this is the Java EE validation framework. Is called the Bing validation, and it's just like a JPA you can think of. Okay, it's used for validate the objects, and the implementation is Hibernate. So we're gonna have a org Hibernate dot validator. Okay, so this is the implementation, and then Spring validation implement the integration of those two. So that we just need to put a validated in front of an object. Okay, and then in this object we can have different rules. Okay, we can use again annotations. We can customize the annotations, or we can use the existing annotations. Let's see, we have a max. Okay, so then this is the maximum number. Okay, if it's a number, or we can have a length. Okay, so then this length is gonna be have a maximum and a minimum. Okay, so then we can let's just see. Okay, the minimum length is let's see 3. Okay, and the maximum length is let's say 220. Okay, and also we can have a message. Okay, so there's a default message, or we can just customize the message. Okay, so customize the message like the ingredient name should be 3 to 20. Okay, character. Yes. Okay, so and once we have this, we don't need to write our if checks. We just need this annotation and put it in front of the class, and both method will have the same validation rule. Okay, so let's try it. Start the project, go to Postman, and same thing. Okay, post a very short name, save. Okay, and then we got this bad request. Okay, so it means that like our request got rejected, and the exception, you can see here, the exception thrown. Okay, so it's here, and it says that method argument not valid exception. Okay, it's from Spring framework, and the validation failed for argument 0 in this class. Okay, and then we will see in the end it will see, okay, the field is name. Okay, and also the message, the default message we give is ingredient name should be 3 to 20 characters, right? So it's very clearly indicate that this is the validation error. Okay, for here, and we can now change this runtime exception into this exception. Okay, so to this method argument not valid exception, just import it. Okay, put it here, and okay, so then let's just keep all the calls as it is. Okay, just restart it. Okay, and then send. Okay, and now you can see the message is big, right? But it's very declarative. It's just tell us like what's going on in which class, and what's the error, and then what's the default. We can just customize this message to just return just one line. But you got the idea, right? So by using Bing validation, using this validated annotation, it can make our code very, very clear. We don't have to put a lot of if-else checks, but instead we just need some annotations, okay, in our class, so that this validation will automatically kick in and then validate. And if anything is wrong, then it will throw exception, then we have an exception handler to handle it. Okay. If nothing is wrong, let's see if we just have this, and okay, then everything goes well because this apple is matching the validation rule, right? So we can still conduct the normal business. Wait, here, this is okay, 14. Okay, so this is apple. Okay, so that's it for the validation. Very quick. Thanks.